Hello guys, and welcome to Supreme Ruler Ultimate. Supply is a very tricky thing. In fact, I made an entire guide about supply in Supreme Ruler that you can find in the playlist below in the description or in the card to the top right, along with many other guides that I make. Today, however, we're going to be getting a little more detailed on a very specific task of supply that I noticed that a lot of individuals are still confused about when it comes to how to make supply work for them. In my supply guide, I fully explained how supply works and what it does and how you can use it. However, I didn't cover the bare bones essentials of the actual what buttons do I press to get the result that I want. So that's what we're going to do today. So putting supply in an area, how do I get supply on a front line, or how do I use it in industry to benefit me? While in war, there's multiple ways to move supply around, including supply planes and supply trucks. That can be very micro intensive. So we're going to talk about making a supply hub specifically today. And since we're going to talk about making a supply hub, I'm going to tackle it with industry. So I placed down this gigantic oil field, as we can see. I have the supply map open so you can see the lighter spots, there's less supply, the darker, there's more supply. So right over here, we have a bunch of oil fields. If we go check supply, 45%, supply, 33%. Now, assuming you already know the basics of how supply works or you've already seen my guide on it, I'm going to be skipping over some parts as I explain what to do. So as we can see, all of this supply is actually lowering the further northwest we get here. That is because the #1 supply hub in this region is Albuquerque. It's not this city here, and it's not any of the industrial complexes, which, by the way, all of which produce their own amount of supply. Technically speaking, at 100% infrastructure efficiency, this small village of Farmington would produce roughly 30% of the supply needed to fill this bar, 30% of what the hex would have. It's at 45% because the way supply works, only the highest available source of supply is actually used on a hex. So if I have a 50% next to a 50%, that will not stack. If I have a 1% next to a 99%, that 1% is going to be greatly boosted by the 99%, and the 99% itself won't actually be detracted from this. So Albuquerque right now has a supply of 68%. That supply is stretching outwards normally with standard supply rules. It's also moving down the road at very efficient rates and then spreading off from the road as well. And that is currently what's helping up here. But let's say this was a war zone, or what it is right now, a gigantic oil field, and I wish to make this more efficient for my units to fight in, or I wish to make this more efficient because every single indie facility, as we can see in the little specs here, has a max possible output that can be hit based on the infrastructure spending and the supply that you have in the region. So if we want to supply this region most efficiently, we need two things. We need #1, a single hex with the highest possible supply, which is 100%, as close to the center of all this as possible. And we need infrastructure that will allow us to move supply easily, such as roads and rails, so that we don't have to worry about the supply falling off in the desert and other types of terrains like hills, which do not work very well with supply movement whatsoever. So we'll start here at Farmington. We need to get Farmington up to 100% supply. So now we know it has a base of 30% production. I have 115% roughly infrastructure efficiency, so getting this all the way up would not necessarily be the worst thing. Every building that produces supply has a preset value of supply it produces. So for example, an air base, not an airfield, an air base specifically, produces 40% of the supply that can be produced on a hex. So I'm going to go ahead and place that down there. This is very useful in case you also wish to both spread supply as well as make it so that your Air Force can not only land and operate out of a region, but also garrison, like go into reserves in that region as well. It's more expensive than an airstrip, but you get more benefits out of it. However, it's also more expensive than just placing supply depots, which provide 20% of the supply each. So I'll go ahead and place a supply depot here. Assuming no bonuses, we are looking at 90% supply production here with these 3 buildings. So if we had one more, that would push it over to 110%, although it doesn't actually work that way. It's just going to be at 100%. So we're going to let these build, and we're going to let the supply take effect, and then we're going to look at the new situation. The new buildings have been built, and supply immediately boosted up to 56%. The first day they were built, that is the start of the supply starting to accumulate. The next day, 66%. As you can see, it is starting to accumulate everything that it is currently building. 77%, going up pretty much reliable 11%. This is going to fill up all the way to 100%. As you can see, the glow. Oh my god, the glow. This is now the new supply hub of the region, and without actually any complicated infrastructure, now we're at 100% supply. That's what it'll cap out at. You can see, even without the roads to necessarily work off of everywhere, it spreads really effectively around. So this is a perfect example of, you don't want to just add supply everywhere, supply depot here. Even with minimal infrastructure, look at the glow that comes in just a circle from just having one very efficient supply location, even if you do add something like an airbase instead of just supply hubs. Now you can use the same thing on the border with another country to help spill supply over once you invade. More than that, you can also see the trail trickling down the road and spreading off from it with a pretty strong and noticeable effect and reach here. And so that's another good thing about this. Already, this is so efficient without placing any new road or rail infrastructure that realistically, you don't need to place any new roads or rails down. But if you wanted to place any new roads or rails down, you could make this even more efficient. Roads and rails will operate with pretty much the same exact efficiency for moving supply. However, rails are far cheaper for that purpose. Now, the way this works is I essentially just need infrastructure to connect back to this spot if I want to effectively spread the supply for a full 100%. It doesn't even need to be the same kind of infrastructure. Since there's already roads here, I can leave them there. I don't need to add rails to where there's already roads for just the purpose of supply. So this is already connecting over here, so I could take a rail line here, spread it out here and along this way. Now, one thing to note is, as well, not only will it spread off the hexes where I have infrastructure, so this is honestly pretty good all by itself for filling this area in, which wasn't quite at that near max supply that the other things closer by were. The way this infrastructure works is, so long as I have a rail on a location, it's essentially procking out in every direction. So even though it's only visually connecting in this line, I don't need to, for example, connect this and then connect this and make it look like a triangle. Because so long as, for example, this is connected here, then this is also connected here in terms of how the infrastructure works, even if it doesn't visually show it, to the point where if you actually do go ahead and in places like this, you try to make a connection, for example, right here. Oh, that was a rail. I meant to put a road. Either way, it will automatically build. It doesn't actually need to build because technically speaking, it's already built. It's just now visually showing. Now that I've explained how building the infrastructure works and shown you what it does and how it interacts with roads and rails, we're going to talk about the actual ways you can affect supply. And I will just use the actual fandom wiki to pull these numbers. So as I was explaining in-game, factors affecting supply levels, terrain does matter, highways and railroads matters, infrastructure funding matters, there's a bunch of things like this, things I've already covered, especially in my guide. Then there's sources of supply. Now this I intentionally did not cover in my original guide, but this kind of fits in better here. So as you can see, every level of city generates a different value of supply. 0 point indicates the percentage. 1 is a full 100%. 0.3 is 30%. Small village generating 30% along with a village. Next tier is 40% for the next 3 types, and then 50%. And then the largest city type, the mega city, generates as much as a capital city with 60%. An industrial complex by itself only produces a tenth of the total, 10%. So that's enough to have the facility operating, but it's certainly not efficient. However, making a dedicated supply hub also may not be efficient unless you have a good cluster of things producing in a region, like I made with the oil field. As you see, military complexes, 30%, 50% for the fortress. An oceanic complex produces 60% all by itself, which is good because you can't really optimize that at all. Now, there's some very special non-base hex buildings here, such as the airbase's seaport. These are marked partly stackable because you cannot use multiple of these on top of each other. So for example, let's say I have a small village, 30% supply there, great. And let's say it's on the coastline. I put an airbase there. Now it's producing 50%, 10% plus 40%, we have 50%. I cannot make another airbase to then get that up to 90% because an airbase will not stack with another airbase. However, these two can stack together. So if I put a seaport and an airbase together on top of a small village, well, I've hit the 100% mark. This is a very expensive supply hub because these things are way more expensive than actual supply depots. However, it's a fully functional air depot, essentially, where I can store my air units and base them for operations. And it's the same thing for a naval fleet. It's not a sea pier. As you see, sea pier has zero effect, airfield is zero effect, but airbase and seaport work like this. They can be combined, but you cannot stack multiples of these for the purpose of supply. Supply depot, we went over. This generates 20%, as you can see. This is different from everything else. Rather than being a base item, or rather than being something that's partly stackable, but you can't put more than one on top of each other, this can be placed as much as you want. You can fill every single free spot of the hex with supply depots if you want. However, because there are 6 spots on a hex, you will technically go over 100% if you do this, and that will bring no further effect. However, this does still generate more supply. So if you're looking to build supply hubs, supply depots are a solid choice because they are cheap and they are effective. If you're looking for some more utility, look at making maybe an airbase, maybe a seaport, maybe both, and also look at what you put as the base of what you're building on top of it. If it's a big city, you won't actually need that much. If it's a military facility, well, maybe you might want to just splurge on the fortress instead of the complex if this is supposed to be a super ultra well-supplied, well-defendable location. But that is basically how making a supply hub works, and that is every single mechanic that functions around it fully explained. If you do this on your borders, then your next foray into charging into Mexico or some Middle Eastern country will be a lot easier, as your supply spread will creep over into the border almost as fast as your troops can move through it. And if you're looking to optimize your industry, this will come in handy for you, I am sure. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below. If you have any other ideas for guides for Supreme Ruler Ultimate, also feel free to leave those in the comments below. I hope this guide was helpful to you in learning how to manage your supply using supply hubs. For now, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.